The venom and the barked sun was a dying ember over the village of Oru when the shadow struck. My son, Kobe, was only 7. He was playing near the tall grass, his laughter a sweet melody that I thought would never end. In Oru, we live by the rhythm of the harvest and the heat, but we always keep one eye on the ground. We know that beauty often hides a sting. Then came the sound, a dry, metallic hiss. It wasn't the sound of wind in the leaves or the rustle of a bird. It was the sound of a blade being drawn across a stone. Before I could scream his name, the serpent lunged. It was a thick, ink-black viper with eyes like burning coals. Its body was a ribbon of pure night, moving with a speed that defied the laws of the physical world. Its fangs sank deep into Kobe's small ankle. The world went silent. I watched my son collapse into the dust, his face turning the color of ash. The snake didn't slide away. It coiled back, watching us with a cold, hateful intelligence. It didn't look like an animal. It looked like a demon sent to claim a soul. I scooped Kobe into my arms, his body already shaking with a violent fever. The venom was afire, and it was spreading fast. I could see the black lines of the poison racing up his veins like ink spilled on a white cloth. In our village, a snake bite is often a death sentence. The neighbors gathered, their faces etched with pity and fear. The black viper, they whispered, shaking their heads. No one survives that kiss. The darkness has claimed him. They spoke of Kobe as if he were already a ghost, a memory to be buried. Their pity felt like salt in a fresh wound. I ignored them. I carried Kobe into our small hut, laying him on the reed mat. His breathing was shallow, a ragged sound that tore at my heart. Every gasp seemed like it might be his last. The village healer came and looked at the wound. The skin around the puncture marks was already turning purple, the flesh swelling and weeping. It smelled of rot and metallic chemicals. There is no cure for this darkness, the healer said softly, his eyes avoiding mine. Prepare the burial shroud. The viper's hate is stronger than any herb I possess. I looked at my son's closed eyes and felt a cold, sharp rage. I would not let the earth take him. Not today. Not while I still had breath to fight for him. I remembered the legends of my ancestors. The stories of the things that grow in the places where men fear to walk. I remembered the stories my grandfather told me about the ancient tree at the edge of the forbidden forest. Its bark was scarred and gray, but inside, it held a secret. They called it the Tree of Whispers because they said the spirits of the earth spoke through its roots. It was a place of power, but also a place of danger. Desperate, I left Kobe with his grandmother and ran into the night. The forest was a wall of thorns and shadows. Every snap of a twig sounded like a snake's warning. The air was thick with the scent of damp moss and ancient decay. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I didn't care about the predators that prowled the dark. The only predator I feared was the one already inside my son's blood. I found the tree standing alone in a clearing, bathed in the eerie light of a pale moon. It looked like a skeletal hand reaching out of the ground. I took my rusted knife and carved into the thick, gnarled bark. A pale, milky sap began to ooze out. It smelled of earth, old rain, and something sharp, like lightning. I gathered the bark and the sap, my hands trembling. This was my only hope, a gamble against the inevitable. Back at the hut, I boiled the bark into a thick, dark tea. The smell was overpowering, bitter, sharp, and medicinal. It filled the small room, making my eyes water. Kobe was slipping away. His skin felt like a hot stone under my palm. His small hands were clenched into fists, fighting a battle he was losing. I pried his jaws open and poured the liquid down his throat. He coughed, a weak, wet sound, but he swallowed. Drink the life, Kobe, I whispered. Fight the shadow. I spent the night pressing the damp, boiled bark against his swollen leg. The active ingredients within the tree were ancient chemicals designed to protect the wood from parasites and rot. Now, I was asking them to protect my child. I prayed to every spirit I knew. Don't let the shadow win. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, and for a moment, I thought I heard the hiss of the viper again, mocking us from the dark. It felt as if the snake was waiting outside the door, waiting for the light in Kobe's eyes to finally go out so it could claim its victory. Day one was a nightmare of sweat and screams. Kobe's fever spiked so high I feared his brain would melt. He thrashed on the mat, crying out for things I couldn't see. Day two was a terrifying silence. He lay so still I had to hold a mirror to his nose to see if he was still breathing. The fog on the glass was the only thing that kept me from screaming. I kept feeding him the bark tea, drop by drop. The battle was invisible but violent. The tree's essence was locked in a war with the venom. It was nature against nature, the defense of the forest against the weapon of the swamp. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. My eyes were red from crying and watching the slow rise and fall of his chest. On the third day, the miracle began. The swelling began to recede. The angry purple hue faded into a dull, bruised pink. The black lines on his veins started to retreat, as if the poison was being chased back to the wound. The fever broke suddenly, leaving Kobe drenched in sweat but cool to the touch. He opened his eyes, and for the first time in 3 days, he recognized me. On the morning of the third day, a neighbor shouted from outside. Her voice was full of a strange, high-pitched terror. I walked out, blinking in the bright, unforgiving light of the morning sun. There, near the spot where Kobe had been bitten, lay the black viper. It wasn't moving. Its body was bloated and stiff, its scales dull. There were no marks of a struggle, no wounds from a hunter's spear or a hawk's talons. The villagers gathered in a circle, staring in disbelief. The snake that bit my son was found dead exactly 3 days after the attack. It looked as if it had been consumed from the inside out. A strange, dark liquid thick and smelling of the bark tea leaked from its mouth. It was a sight that defied logic. The villagers backed away, crossing their arms over their chests to ward off evil. They had never seen a predator fall so mysteriously. It was as if the very venom it used to kill had turned against it, curdling in its own glands. The village elder knelt by the dead snake, poking it with a long stick. He looked at the liquid leaking from its fangs and then looked at my hut. "This is a sign," he murmured, his voice trembling. "The boy's blood was stronger than the snake's hate. The poison has found its way home." We realized then the terrifying truth. The snake was killed by its own venom. It was a rare, dark phenomenon that the elders had only heard of in myths. When the viper bit Kobe, something in the boy's resilience bolstered by the potent bark medicine caused a chemical revolt. The venom, unable to destroy the host, had reflected back. The predator had become the prey of its own malice. The snake had been poisoned by the very boy it tried to kill. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. The darkness had tried to take my son, but it had only ended itself. Kobe was alive, but the world felt different now. The balance of nature had shifted in our little corner of Oru. Kobe woke up hungry, a hunger that seemed bottomless. His body was thin, his muscles weak and wasted from the ordeal. The healer, now looking at Kobe with a mix of awe and suspicion, suggested we feed him the cashew fruits and nuts that grew in the sun-drenched valley. These weren't ordinary fruits. They were heavy with juice and rich, oily kernels, packed with the vitamins and minerals his broken body craved. I gathered the brightest red and yellow cashew apples I could find. They were beautiful, swollen with the sweetness of the earth. I roasted the nuts over a low fire, the smell filling the air with a nutty, comforting aroma that signaled the end of our morning. As Kobe ate, I saw the light returning to his eyes. The health benefits of the cashew fruits, the antioxidants, the healthy fats, the proteins were more than just food. They were the building blocks of a new life. He ate with a frantic energy, as if he were trying to replace everything the venom had burned away. Weeks passed, and the transformation was miraculous. The nourishment and vitality provided by the cashew diet acted like a second medicine. He didn't just recover. He grew stronger than he had ever been before the bite. His skin glowed with a healthy luster, and his legs, once thin and shaky, became sturdy and fast. He began to run again, but his movements were different now. He was faster, more focused, and strangely quiet. The trauma of the bite had left a mark, but the healing had left a gift. He walked with a quiet confidence that made people stop and stare. He didn't play like the other children anymore. He moved with the grace of something that had seen the other side and returned. The boy who almost died was now the most vibrant soul in Oru, but there was a distance in his gaze. He would spend hours staring at the horizon, his body perfectly still. It was as if he was listening to a frequency that no one else could hear. The vitality was there, but it was fueled by something mysterious. It wasn't just his body that changed, it was his mind. When Kobe returned to the village school, his teachers were stunned. Before the bite, he was a distracted student, more interested in chasing butterflies than learning his letters. He was a normal, happy, somewhat lazy boy. Now, he sat at the front of the class, his eyes fixed on the chalkboard within.
Intensity that was almost frightening. He processed information with incredible speed. He could solve math problems that baffled the older children. He remembered every word of every story he read. It was as if the venom had cleared away the fog in his brain, and the cashew nutrients had built a temple of logic in its place. He learns as if he's hungry for the world, his teacher told me, her voice full of worry. He didn't just understand the lessons. He dissected them. He wanted to know why things worked, how the world was put together. The scholar's mind had been born from a moment of near death, and it was growing at a rate we couldn't track. By the end of the term, Kobe became best in school. It wasn't even a close competition. He stood on the wooden stage during the ceremony, clutching a certificate in his small, steady hands. The villagers cheered, but there was a hint of awe and perhaps a little fear in their voices. They remembered the boy in the dust. They remembered the dead snake. I sat in the back, my heart bursting with a mixture of pride and a lingering, dark fear. I knew that Kobe's success was built on the ruins of a tragedy. He was a survivor who had turned a curse into a crown. But sometimes, late at night, I saw him staring at his ankle. The faint white scars of the fangs remained, a permanent map of where the shadow had entered him. He would touch them and smile, a small, cold smile that didn't reach his eyes. He wasn't just the best student. He was something entirely new to Oru. Even though the snake was dead, its memory haunted our village. People started calling Kobe the Viper's son. It wasn't always a compliment. Some whispered that he had taken the snake spirit, that the venom hadn't been defeated, but had merely changed forms. They noticed how he could sit perfectly still for hours, watching the world without blinking. They noticed how his eyes seemed to glint with a golden light in the dark. Kobe felt the whispers, but he didn't react with anger. He became more solitary, spending his time reading books under the cashew trees at the edge of the village. He was a genius, but he was a lonely one. The price of his brilliance was a distance between him and the world he had nearly left. He was a miracle, but miracles are often uncomfortable to live next to. They remind people of their own fragility and of the darkness that waits in the grass. I returned to the Tree of Whispers often. I wanted to understand what I had truly given my son. I studied the bark, its texture, and the way it seemed to heal its own scars almost instantly. I realized that the active ingredients were more than just chemicals. They were the tree's own defense against the rot of the forest. The tree survived by absorbing the darkness around it and turning it into a shield. I had fed my son a shield, but a shield is also a weight. I wondered if the bark's essence was now part of his soul, a layer of protection that kept the world out as much as it kept the life in. Kobe joined me one day at the tree. He touched the scarred wood with a look of recognition. "It tastes like iron," he said softly. "The tea you made. I still taste it every time I think. It's like a cold fire in the back of my throat." He wasn't afraid of the tree. He looked at it like a brother. Kobe's hunger for knowledge became an obsession that consumed his days. He exhausted the village library within months and began asking for books from the city. He wanted to know about biology, about poisons, and about the stars. He was fascinated by the mechanics of life and death. He studied the cashew nut with scientific precision, learning how its oil could be used for medicine and light. He taught the other children, his voice calm and steady, but he never played with them. He was a leader, but a detached one. He looked at life like a puzzle to be solved, a series of chemical reactions to be mastered. I watched him and wondered if the boy who played in the dust was gone forever. Was this brilliant, clinical mind the real Kobe, or was it a mask created by the bark and the venom? He was a scholar of the woods, but he seemed to have forgotten how to be a child. One evening, Kobe brought home a gold medal for a regional competition. He had outperformed every student in the district. He threw the medal on the table without a word, his expression blank. "Does it not make you happy?" I asked, touching the cold medal. "You are the pride of Oru." He looked at me, and for a second, his eyes looked cold, almost slitted, like the viper's. "It's just metal, Mother." The snake didn't care about medals. It cared about power. It cared about being the most efficient thing in the grass. I felt a shiver run down my spine. The trauma was still there, hidden under the layers of his success. He wasn't just thriving, he was competing with the memory of death. He had to be the best because anything less felt like losing to the venom. His success was a weapon he was building against the fear of being weak again. 3 years to the day after the bite, we found another snake in the garden. This one was small and harmless, a green grass snake, but the sight of it sent the neighbors into a panic. They screamed and reached for shovels. Kobe didn't flinch. He walked up to the snake, knelt in the dirt, and picked it up with his bare hands. The village held its breath. The snake coiled around his wrist, its tongue flickering. Kobe looked at it with a strange, sad smile, his face inches from its head. "You don't have enough fire," he whispered. He walked to the edge of the woods and let it go. He wasn't afraid of the wild anymore. He was a part of it. The villagers watched him, their whispers turning into a heavy silence. He had mastered the fear that still gripped them. He was no longer one of them. The village healer, who had once given up on Kobe, grew bitter as the boy's fame grew. He saw Kobe's brilliance as an insult to his own traditional knowledge. He began to spread rumors that the boy was using dark magic stolen from the Forbidden Forest. "Look at him," the healer cried to a crowd at the market. "He is too smart, too fast. No human survives that venom without a trade. He has sold his heart to the tree for a mind of stone." He tried to turn the village against us, preying on their natural fear of the unknown. I stood my ground, defending my son with everything I had. But I saw the doubt in the eyes of our oldest friends. It is a lonely thing to be a miracle in a world that prefers the safety of the known. Kobe didn't seem to care about the rumors, but I saw the way he withdrew even further into his books. Kobe began spending more and more time in the Forbidden Forest. He said the trees spoke to him in a way people couldn't, not with words, but with patterns of light and the movement of sap. He discovered new herbs and documented their uses in a thick leather journal. He told me that the venom had changed his blood, making it more conductive to the world's energy. He spoke of things I didn't understand, cellular memory and adaptive immunity. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the feeling. He was outgrowing Oru. The village that had witnessed his death was now too small for his life. The cashew nuts had given him the vitality to leave, and the bark had given him the mind to seek more. He was like a bird that had outgrown its nest, looking toward the horizon with a restless, hungry heart. The day came when a letter arrived from a great university in the city. They had heard of the Scholar of the Woods and his papers on natural toxins. They offered him a full scholarship to study medicine and biochemistry. Kobe looked at the letter, then at the scarred ankle that had started it all. "I have to go, Mother," he said, his voice firm. "I have to find out why the snake died. I have to find out what exactly is in my blood." My heart broke, but I nodded. I couldn't hold back a flood. I had fought death to keep him. I couldn't fight life to hold him back. He packed his bags with dried cashew nuts, his journals, and a small, cherished piece of the gray bark from the Tree of Whispers. He left Oru without looking back, a young man fueled by a dark, brilliant purpose. I sat by the cashew tree after he left, the silence of the village pressing in on me. The village felt quiet, the echoes of his brilliance still hanging in the air like dust motes in a beam of light. I thought about the cycle of it all, the bite, the bark, the fruit, the success. It was a story of survival, but it was also a story of sacrifice. My son was a hero and a genius, but he was also a boy who had to die a little bit to become something great. The snake was killed by its own venom, but its strike had forced a blossom that otherwise might never have bloomed. I realized that we are all shaped by what tries to kill us. Kobe was the proof that even the most lethal poison can be a catalyst for the greatest good if you have the right medicine and the will to survive. I looked at the grass where the viper had died. It was always a little greener there, a permanent mark of a battle won. Years later, Kobe became a world-renowned doctor. He developed a revolutionary antivenom using the extracts of the Tree of Whispers, combined with the proteins he found in cashew kernels. He saved thousands of lives across the continent. In every interview, he spoke of his mother and the red cashew fruits of Oru. He never forgot the 3 days in the dark. He proved that the natural world holds the cure for every shadow it creates. He was a beacon of light for those who had been bitten by despair. The venom was gone, but the bark had grown over his heart. Back in the village, I still walk past the spot where the snake died. The story has become a legend, a tale told to children to teach them about resilience. But I know the truth. It wasn't just science. It was a mother's love and the strange, dark mercy of the forest. Kobe realized that the tree bark hadn't just cured him, It had adapted him. He was the first of a new kind, a hybrid of the forest's defense and the swamp's malice. He produced a final serum, a shimmering, dark liquid that smelled of both life and death. He sent it back to Aura with a note, "For the ones the shadow touches." He then disappeared into the deep forest, leaving behind his medals and his title. Some say he became a guardian of the Tree of Whispers. Others say that on quiet nights, you can hear a metallic hiss followed by a gentle, brilliant laughter. The venom was gone, but the bark had grown into a forest of its